We are recording live.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. As always, thank you so much for stopping by. Our guest today is a solo wilderness explorer, professional photographer, and author of the book, Feel the Wild. Also, check out his short film, The Power of Nature, and his new project that will be coming out soon, Feel the Wild VR. Our guest today, the fantastic Daniel Fox. How are you doing today, Daniel?
Doing excellent. It's not raining today, so any day that it's not raining, it's a happy day. When you see the sun shining on through the trees or on the buildings, you're like, yay!
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's actually a gorgeous day here. I had to put a sheet over the window here to stop the glare coming in my face.
Yeah, a little glary over there.
No sun, stop the sun.
Yeah.
Finally,
thought I'd say
like,
that.
no.
Yeah.
Oh man! So at the beginning of our show, every show, what we do is we kind of introduce our guests to our audience by doing something what we call two truths and a lie. So I'm going to read.
Lie.
Yeah, well,
Never lie.
well, maybe there's no lies in this because they're just so crazy. I don't know how they could be lies. So, okay, you guys, right? So Devon and I are going to guess, right? We're going to guess.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the first one. Daniel got married in a glacial cave and had to wear helmets due to falling ice, the potential of falling ice. Okay, that's one. Number two, while solo adventuring, came face to face with a grizzly bear. Okay, on his own in the wilderness.
Geez.
Yeah. Number three, while solo kayaking, all these solo things, solo kayaking was hit by a rogue wave and his kayak was broken in two. So, what do we? I know, yeah.
All very specific, very to the point. I've seen the
music.
Yeah, it's like
I've seen the short film. I've read through the book, so I know some of this. Gonna go with they're all true. Or the top one. Maybe he didn't wear a helmet to get hit by falling ice, but I also think that is true. So now I'm lost.
So any comments? Any comments, Daniel? Before, well, I threw the grizzly bear in there, and I don't know if it was a grizzly or not a grizzly. But I know there was a big bear that stood up on his hind legs and was sniffing you out. So I don't know, Daniel. What are you gonna say?
Well, so they are indeed the three of them almost true. The one that is slightly not true is the encounter with a black bear.
There we go.
And it was on Vancouver Island where both the bear and we ended up on a standoff, like 5 meters apart from each other, both of them on our hind legs, and having this kind of Western duel where seriously, like you just feel like the entire world is stopped, like the trees just stop moving, the wind just like took it, hold the breath, and then the birds are just like kind of hiding behind the leaves. The same thing as in the Western movie where everybody's behind the windows but like peeking and trying to see what's going to happen between these two characters on the main street. And the story that I wrote is really about something like the insight that came out of this story is about the voice, the power of the voice, how the voice has so much power and it's filled with vibrations and intent. And when you find yourself out there in the world with creatures that don't understand you, what they do understand though is all this energy that's coming out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because
and then the ice cave. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, and then the ice cave was indeed true. My wife and I, we did marry in an ice cave. She was game enough to just follow me and go along with the ride. Even putting a helmet on after going to the hairdresser. So for 2 hours, and then this doesn't matter what you just did, just put the helmet on. And really carrying the wedding dress down, because we had to, we took the helicopter and then we landed on this glacier, but then we still had to kind of hike down through this tunnel of ice.
Yeah.
And then she's carrying the wedding dress, and it's like in the creek, and we have our dog with us, and we we did the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
We signed the registry, and then as soon as it was done, we get the helicopter pilot on a walkie-talkie, basically telling us like the second that it ended, he said, "All right, guys, for some reason the weather just like turned, and we have this like really window to leave, and it's as if everything had been perfectly timed and set up." And we got into the helicopter, and the clouds were coming in, and with just this little opening, and we just took off.
Wow.
That's incredible. That's incredible. It's funny because my wife and I have a similar story. Actually got engaged on a backcountry ski trip, and a helicopter flew us up above Nelson, British Columbia, and
No
left
way.
us. Yeah, we were up there for 12 days with my sister and her boyfriend and two other people. And a helicopter flies you in with all your gear and then leaves you.
Yeah.
And then we had a little hut, and there was a woodshed there, but the woodshed had a padlock on it. We couldn't get it, so we didn't have any wood for this little stove. So we had no heat for 12 days. And then at the end of the trip, my wife wasn't the greatest skier at that time, and I was trying to introduce her to it. And I had this ring, and I was going to propose to her on top of this beautiful mountain in the sun. It snowed the whole time. The sun never came out, and there's just I need a whole episode to talk about it. But it's very when you started talking about it, oh my God, this is exactly kind of similar to. Yeah, we got
Except
anyway.
didn't turn out as smooth, I guess.
It wasn't as smooth.
But if she's willing to go through that, then she's the right one.
Yeah, we're 31 years married
Very
this
well.
year, so I
Yeah,
guess.
very
So,
good.
Congratulations. We're
So-
in
yeah,
our fourth, fifth, yes.
nice. So what about the kayak? What about this kayak trip?
The
That's
kayak
insane.
happens. Usually, I do all my expeditions are done. I go with the flow. You know, I give myself 2-3 weeks window, and then I go to a place. And really, my intent is to kind of connect with the place and go with the wind. And really, you know, if the weather's too bad, then I really don't push it. It's not really about proving or conquering a place, but like connecting with it. But for
Mhm.
this particular paddle, I was doing a fundraising for my WILD.ECO. So I was on a schedule.
Yes.
I'd started from Victoria, and my goal was to get to San Francisco through the Pacific coast. So
Oh.
1,000 miles, cross the San Juan Strait,
Yep.
leaving Victoria. It took me 12 hours. For some reason, there was a current. It just like, you know, snail crossing. And then after that, all the way across, like out towards the ocean, and then down the Pacific coast. And then in Washington State, there were a couple of days where they were pretty long because you have these stretches of beach that goes on for 20 miles plus, and you have to be 2-3 miles offshore to like be away from the breaking point. But when I get into the Columbia River, into Astoria, I was extremely lucky. It was like smooth getting to the river, into the Columbia River. When I left, though, the forecast was not great, but I had this window to leave Astoria, and the plan was to get out, clear the jetty. The jetty is this thing that just like shoots for 2 miles, so you have to paddle out for 2 miles before you can even turn. And so I'm out, and finally I can start going south. And then there's this massive big swell out on the ocean that's really soothing, but like turns into this wall of destruction on the shore. So my idea of going back to shore after the jetty didn't work out. I could wait for the tide to turn back and go back to Astoria. But so many times, you know, we push the envelope a little bit and everything is fine. And, you know, so many times I did that and everything worked out. So I'm like, you know, I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to go south. And by the end of the day, the swell should come down and I should be able to land where I'm supposed to land. But, you know, after 8 hours, nothing had changed. I was at the seaside just south of Astoria, and I couldn't land anywhere. So I was forced to push into the night. And I knew that there was a spot just before Cannon Beach where I could kind of like tuck in, as like I think it's Indian Arm or Indian Bay.
Yeah.
And I knew that there were some rocks that would protect my coming in. And So I went into the night, I'm paddling into the night, and there's like bioluminescence in the water. Stars are shooting, like shooting stars. Like at one point I even told myself like, wow, if there's a at night for me to paddle through through, this is gonna be the most amazing time. A couple of hours later, that forecast um, that I didn't want to face. Like it was winds coming from the south at 20 knots, 15, 20 knots. They started to show up and everything just went south. There was a rogue wave. That place that I thought that I could land, but the swell actually was wrapping up and like hitting that spot full force. And there was a rogue wave that capsized me on that spot.
Oh.
Broke my first battle. I was able to get back up, and then there was another wave that capsized me again. So I was not able to get back up on this one. I had to wet exit, and I'm in the middle of the night, in white shark territory.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
By myself, and I got back in, and now I'm like flooded into, cold water. I haven't had, I've been on the water for almost 12 hours at that point. Didn't have dinner, snacked my way through the day. And, but I managed to get out of the surf zone and pump the water out and started to paddle now, like continue. And the wind is coming at me and I'm starting to get the chill. And it's really, I don't have a lot of fat on me. But, so I know that like when I start to get the chill, I don't have that much time before everything goes out of my control. And so the possibility of me staying on the water just disappeared. And I had to figure out a way to get back to shore. And I noticed this campfire on the beach, and it seemed relatively close, even though there was like the breakers in between. And but I had to go for it. In the worst case scenario, if the wind had been like taking me offshore, like I was thinking that I would have just jumped out of the boat and just swim to the shore. Because in the end, it's not worth your life. But the wind was coming south, so I did try to go, and I did. I remember basically before going forward, like I sent out my intentions. I asked permission. I'm like, ocean, this is what I'm doing. Let me through, and I start paddling, and this like massive breaker just breaks in front of me. Like you don't see anything, you just hear it. And so I stopped, and then I'm like, okay, I'm trying to figure out the timing, and then I start paddling as much as I can. And then suddenly I hear this rumbling behind me, and like I get the goosebumps, but it felt like a crescendo of terror, like there was building up, and I could visually see this monster rising from the depth of the sea, like the movie is playing in your head. And the wave literally just collapsed on me, broke the kayak as if it was a twig, and broke my kayak in two. And like so, but there's nothing to be angry. There are things that are just bigger than you. When I felt the send, after that the waves are just pushing myself in the kayak forward. When I felt the sand under my feet, I was just grateful to be alive without much damage. And there was, if you climb Everest and it's too easy, you lack the respect that these kind of things deserve. Paddling the Pacific Ocean that's big, and it demands your respect, and you have to take it seriously.
Demands our reverence.
Absolutely. So those were the truth and the lies.
So how did somebody like you get into solo adventuring? When I was 16 or 17, that's how I used to get away. I used to go on my own. I used to climb the local mountains here in Vancouver and kind of trudge up through the snow, sit on the top of a peak, and I'd stare across at the Lions and the Lion Mountains here in Vancouver. and I would meditate. I didn't know what meditating was. I just used to have my time, and I sit on my mountain like a yogi, but I didn't know what I was doing. Right. I just loved it. I felt peace, and I'd hike all the way back down, and then I'd go home. And but most of the stuff that I've done with other people. So what got you doing the solo? I mean, your book. I have your book here.
Yeah.
And incredible photographs and stories in this book, but it's all solo adventure. So what was in your mind? What got you doing this solo?
I grew up moving a lot. My parents, I mean, that's a longer conversations, but by the age of 12, I had moved already 10 times. So I constantly had to reinvent my world every time that we moved. You know, I would lose friends as quick as I made them. Right. But there was one consistency in all these different places was nature. Yeah. There was always a local forest that I could go and get lost or find a certain sense of stability. And it became kind of my safe place. The trees became my tribes. That world of wonders became that safe place where life made sense. And that connection never left me. And in fact, every time I love living in the city. I love the cultural buzz, the energy, the creative, the spirit of cities. But every once in a while, I need to go back into the wilderness to be reminded of what matters and what is essential and the simplicity of life, because we get too caught up into the complexity of our little worries that we forget how like life at the foundation of it is so simple. And in my journey, I really got to a place to embrace who I was. And I am really an artist, and wilderness is my studio. That's where I go to create. This is my blank canvas. This is the solitude and the silence that I get up there that allows me to connect to something that is bigger than me. And I do believe that I have this capacity to channel something and to see the world in a different way. And then after that, it's my responsibility to share it with the world.
Wow, that's incredible. And
but
so
you know, you need to be a bit of a rebel.
Yeah.
Not following the rules to. You know, I'm not too sure that any artist wake up and decide that this is the path that they take because it's the easiest path. No. You do it, you're driven by something that is inside of you, and you're committed to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some that are fortunate. Yeah.
Your book here.
Yeah.
Feel the Wild, which just came out a month ago, I think it was.
No, it came out at the end of 2019, and then we had a big tour with ARC'TERYX and LEXUS.
Oh, okay. So I mean, the photography. So stories, but the photography in here is absolutely stunning. And actually, I was introduced to you by a friend of mine. We were just talking about it, Praveen Varshney. Shout out for Praveen. I've known Praveen for years. He sent me a message last night, and he said that I got to know Daniel because his photography and is so incredible. I have some of his pictures up in my office.
He is a patron of mine, yeah.
And so I started looking through here, and it's just absolutely stunning. And so what time period was this? Does this go over 20 years, or how long did it take?
10 years. 10 years. From the date that I left New York in 2008. I was living in New York. I lived in New York for on and off 7 years, and then after an unfortunate relationship, the end of a relationship, I got myself to a place where I reassessed everything in my life, the past 15 years, and how I wanted to move forward. And there was really nothing that I wanted to keep at that point. I had tried to do it in the corporate world. I proved to myself that I could do it, but then I was not motivated by it. I was not inspired by it. Yeah. And I decided that, if there was ever a time for me to go back to my source or go back and try to find myself, and then this was the time. So I sold the little that I had, and I took a world map, and I went from New York, and I went as far south as possible. And at the beginning, I wanted to go to the Falkland Islands. But then I realized that my US dollars compared to the British pound would like shorten my stay like by 3.
Right.
So I ended up going to Argentina.
Yeah.
To Patagonia. And this is where I stayed for 6 months. And this is where I really started to write and to photograph and to reconnect with that fire that's in me. And to be honest, for me, it was kind of like going back to my roots. Because when I was young, when I was a kid, I wanted to sail the world and study whales. I was religiously watching the Mutual Omaha,
Wild Kingdom,
Wild Kingdom,
Cousteau,
and like for me, that was I wanted to be a vet. The first time I applied to university was at UBC for marine biology. But, for reasons that are complicated, I ended up in business school.
Right.
I remember precisely the time in my life where I said, you know what, I'm going to go and make money, and then I'll buy myself a boat, and then I'll travel the world. But I remember the feeling that I had when I took that decision that I had sold my soul. And, if you're 20 years old and you already have this awareness that you sold your soul, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of good places for you to go after that. And so I lost myself. I literally just lost myself. I was this spirit who was just moving forward in life without any purpose.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that. It seems to be a bit of a common thread these days. I've had 2 young people. In fact, one of the guests on our show yesterday, Tyler Bowles, he had a similar story. He's 30, Devon? Is he 30 now? He's about 30. And he said he worked in Germany for a few years, and then he worked for a big corporation here in North America for about 3 years. Made a lot of money, was completely unhappy. And like he sold his soul, just like you said. And now he left and he started his own business, and which we had, and it's called Kind Humans, which they do these reusable water bottles and replacing plastic. They do beach cleanups. And so he wanted to have a life of purpose, and that's just like what you're saying here is, that's really interesting. And then another friend of ours in the UK, he called me during the COVID lockdown, and he was same thing, making a lot of money. He's about 28 years old. And he really wanted to have a shift of a life of, follow his dream and a life of purpose as opposed to chasing, the almighty dollar. And these young people, I think, are really starting to, awaken and really see that these days more than my generation anyway. It's really interesting what you did there.
To make a point, though, that there's a big difference in following your dreams or your passion. Doesn't mean that suddenly it's going to be a rosy walk in the park where like life is going to align and everything is going to happen. Finding a life of purpose only means that's the stuff that gets you get up in the morning
jazzed up
and motivated to move forward even when the shit hits the fan. That's
exactly,
I mean, even finding when I give talks and people tell me it's like, I want to find the perfect person or the perfect job or the perfect place to live. I said, perfection doesn't exist. Anything that you do, anywhere that you live, any job that you have, any person that you live, that you decide to commit yourself to, there's going to be some hard moments. There's going to be times where you just like, you're tearing the hair out of your head and just, but if you're in the place that you find that you're connected to, you won't question your place there. You'll be moving forward. And that is what you want to find. And it's just that for me,
you want to find your sweet spot. You want to get into the dance and the rhythm of life of what excites you, right? Yeah.
For me, money and status was not a motivation. So I
Mhm.
needed to find something that was deeper than that. And,
Yeah.
it took me on a long journey to find it. But then once I found it, then you're committed to it. Even though if
Yeah.
the world is falling apart around you, you're still there. You're still committed to doing it.
So there's another project Devon might want to ask you about is your Feel the Wild VR, which is virtual reality. You're probably
no, that sounds super cool. Yeah. So we heard about that your new project is coming out soon, Feel the Wild VR, and I just want to get a little aspect of what that's going to look like. Like, so you just put on like some headgear and then you get to go to like the Grand Canyon or whatnot, and what is this shot on?
You can blame COVID for this one.
There you go.
It's it's a combination of things. The technology is there finally. You have cameras like the Insta360 Titan, really high definition that can shoot 8K, 11Ks in some instances. And then you have the platform like the Oculus Quest 2. But so these two technology coming together, and then you have I'm also the Sennheiser that does the 360 sound recording. So producing that kind of high quality immersive content is not that complicated anymore. And part of my perspective before was really to take people out into the wilderness, because it's not just the destination, obviously, it's a journey. There's a physicality to wilderness. The going to the wilderness is an exercise of humility, because you really realize how small and fragile we are. Nature is fine, but we are fragile and although resilient. But obviously COVID forced me to reassess, how to move forward, and realizing that I could reach a lot more people by bringing the wilderness to them. And you can imagine, whether it's at school or at your place now, having this 15-minute experience, not only visually, but in the audio. And if you want to be in the forest, or if you want to be in the water, by the water, or if you want to be in the Arctic, or if you want to be in the desert, suddenly you can have this moment of connection. And I can easily see a place where, like, you go to the dentist, and instead of watching that monitor above your head, you just have that headset, and then like while someone is playing in your mouth, you just like, oh, I'm in the desert, or I'm in the forest, or going to the doctor and having, instead of dealing with this anxiety of being in a doctor, you're taking this moment to basically have a 15-minute nature experience.
So I can't imagine. This is quite something, because actually last night, Devon and our family, we were watching the David Attenborough series, which was it called One Planet, or which one? Our Planet. Yeah. And we were watching the ones of the forests of the world, and it's absolutely incredible, but it's flat, like it's one dimension. Yeah. So I can't imagine having something like that, where you can actually be, looking around to be virtual reality. It's just mind-boggling.
It's really now the technology that's allowing this, because before that it was just kind of more video game, or it was not real. So you could say it's like, oh yeah, I can see it, but it's not that.
Right.
Yeah.
But now you can wear this on your head, and you can really get this, like, it's just sometimes it's worrying, because now it's becoming too real.
Yeah.
But given with the proper structure and framework and the people around you to guide you, I think that there's going to be some real amazing benefits.
I mean, I loved your short film, The Power of Nature. I thought that was really, it was about 16 minutes or something like
25.
that. 25. I thought it was really, really good, really well done. And actually we'll put a link to that on here when we release in the description, because it's really, really cool. Actually, I'm going to share some stuff with you guys. Now, this is for our YouTube. Let's see if I can.
You know that I had lunch with David Attenborough in London.
Oh, right.
Yeah. For 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, am I
Crazy
sharing
that.
screen there or not? What am I? Can you guys see that?
No.
I don't know.
Oh, that's really, what have I done? Uh-oh.
That's okay. You can edit this a little bit out.
Oh, it's okay. I'm going to share screen. And I guess I got to
There you go.
click. Can you guys see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could just click that bit out. So there we go.
There we go.
Right over Daniel's face.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got a couple of little slides up here. So we know that Daniel wrote the book, and actually the photography is incredible in Field of Wild, and there's a little bit of callback, which we'll revisit at the end of this slideshow. So I bet a lot of people were wondering about this ice cave. So
Yeah.
Daniel sent a few photographs. So if you look down in the far right corner, there's a copy of him and his to-be wife wearing, ice climbing helmets, heading into a cave, and she's in her in her wedding dress.
Her wedding dress, my red shoes. I only wear red shoes.
Oh yeah, you got the red shoes.
and our guide carrying Kobe, our dog. So.
Oh right,
my
yeah.
But, yeah. The wedding dress worked out. It was a gift from her sister, who now passed away. But it really worked out perfectly.
Nice.
Yeah. It has the same flow as the ice that's kind of melting behind it. It's just perfect. Yeah.
It does.
That's incredible.
That's quite something. And then this terrifies me.
I was on the Mendenhall Glacier Lake and near Juneau, just outside Juneau in Alaska. I love that area of the world.
Yeah.
And I was coming back from a hike on the glacier, and there was this iceberg on the lake.
Oh, it's an iceberg.
Yeah, and I noticed there was a flare glare that caught my eye, and I'm paddling. And as I got closer to the iceberg, I noticed that there was like an opening, and so I turned around the kayak, and I started to back paddle into the hole. And this is so the one of me is the GoPro looking at me, and then the other one is with my real camera.
Whoa.
Looking out, and the little white that you see is actually the glacier itself, the Mendenhall Glacier, and that cave is the iceberg.
That's absolutely stunning. I just you're running the gauntlet there, hoping that there's a hole on the other side for you to. It's a tunnel that goes right through the iceberg and out the other side.
No tunnel, just a cave.
It's just a cave.
But just a cave.
Just a cave. Yeah. There was no way out, but forward.
Oh, I see. Oh my gosh.
So the behind me where you see me is the back of the cave.
Right, I see.
And then in front of the kayak is the only way out.
Wow. So, what that picture was Daniel was just sitting in his kayak there in a ice cave that he basically had paddled into with about let's say like a couple foot, like a 2-3 foot hole. Like you just had to slide right in there, and then completely overhead, all ice. Like it's an incredible shot. Inside
a floating iceberg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inside a floating iceberg.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we've got a nice cuddly bear here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a grizzly. That's a grizzly.
So,
is it a Kodiak?
Brown bear. Out of again, I'm just outside Juneau. There's a place called Pack Creek, which is a place well known for observation of brown bears. And I went there before the tourist season. And I spent 2 weeks camping on an island that's in front of the little estuary where a creek comes out. And so every morning I would go and I would sit on the beach and I would observe the bear. And there's no barriers or fences really out in the open. But the bears, those bears have been quite accustomed to human presence. So unless you're running for trouble, there's never been any accident.
Right.
But,
Dev, did you want to ask Daniel a question about you mentioned before that
kind of going back to what we were talking about before, like these things coming face to face with a bear, or being in your kayak for 13 hours and then being hit by a rogue wave, flipped over for your kayak to only just bust on you, and the mindset that you must have when you're dealing with things like that. I just want to hear a little bit about like what is your mindset? What do you have to be thinking to get you through those moments?
I've come to create this mantra that now, is part of my narrative, but it's to stop, breathe, relax, and listen. And it's really kind of understanding that my own reaction will determine also the outcome.
Right.
The world around you resonates to the energy that's within you, whether animals or humans, and if you're filled with fears and anxiety, then that's also what the world will connect with. And for me, there's always this exercise of taking a deep breath and trying to relax myself, because the minute that you start to find a certain clarity, then the things become more enjoyable and less hard.
Right.
I guess a lot of it can be said when you do sport and things get really, it's really intense. Like there's a certain focus that happens once you've cut the noise around.
Right.
And, you have the capacity to change your perspective, either, after a trauma or after when you find yourself with animals. I think that when I'm not a big fan that things happen for a reason, because I'm not too sure that there's a plan that clear for life. I think that there's when things happen, you have two choices. You can choose a path of denial, and if you go there, then you block the energy, and you'll never go further from when you take that place. But if you choose a path of like, okay, it happened, now I have a capacity to grow or to do more with it, then obviously you will look ahead of that, ahead of, in the future, you'll be able to look back and understand how this experience became part of you. But it's only this hindsight that gives you the power to say, this happens for a reason. I would not be the person today because of that, because you made it like that. Wow. So much of the world is about your own perspective, your own input into it. Animals, there's a lot of informal communication that happens when you're with animals. No one will attack usually just for the fun of it. I mean, there are instances, obviously, when a female has a cubs but even within humans, go at a bar at 2:00 in the morning when guys have been drinking. Like, there's a lot of information that happens before two guys decide to really get to the fist. If you understand that, then you can kind of navigate better.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then here's a shot again of, I don't know if this is the same day when you were trying to get ashore or just on the journey of the kayaking.
That was up Washington State during a day where I had to do, was it 30 miles that day?
Wow.
And I was 2 miles offshore. Oof. And I had seen this wave just coming, and I had been able to just last minute to kind of like, because you're paddling parallel to the coast, but I saw this wave and I just I turned and I started to paddle as fast as possible so I could pass it, and you can see breaking behind me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Oh, that's just I don't know why I threw this shot up here. This was my life. This was my life for so many years. Just environment. I saw environmental degradation around the planet. And I'm trying to think. Oh yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure if you've seen any of this. This is some of our little app that we started. So maybe Dev wants to talk. So I've been following you on since when Praveen introduced us. I was following you around on Facebook because I found you quite intriguing, all these solo adventures. But the one thing that was interesting is that I think you're living in Squamish, just between Whistler and Vancouver, for a while. And in the mornings you were going out. This was last month, so that was November. Yeah. And you were hiking up and you were taking a plunge into the cold rivers. And then you had a thermometer with you and you'd put it in, you'd show the camera, and it was 3.6 degrees or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Centigrade. So just above freezing.
Yeah.
And you do your plunges. So Devon, my son here, he had introduced me to this thing called the Wim Hof breathing method and cold water plunges about 3 months ago. And I went on a trek up to Mount Robson with our other son. It's like a 4 day trek. And there's an iceberg lake, Berg Lake. It's called Iceberg Lake for icebergs are floating in it. So I started doing this in this lake, right? And then Devon was teaching me the breathing. So then we thought, why don't we get Daniel to come over to North Vancouver here? And why don't we do a plunge in the local river? This was last weekend. So it was November 30th or something, or December 1st, can't remember. And you had your thermometer and you put it in, and we actually videotaped the whole thing. And we're going to put that up as another little episode of our submergence in the river. And I think what was the temperature? Do you remember what it was? It was
5.1.
5.1.
Yeah.
So balmy warm compared to Squamish. So here's this. I think this photograph is actually after we got out.
After.
We put our clothes back on.
You can see it on your face a little.
Yeah, you can see it on my face. I know, that's right. Let's see. And then, I gotta check.
There's so much. It's incredible.
So here's that's all of us submerged in here.
I remember what I told you when I saw that. Like, we looked like the snow monkeys in Japan.
Yeah.
We're like, you just need a little bit of steam and then more of a red face and this is National Geographic snow monkeys in Vancouver.
We're the snow monkeys. People thought we were completely insane. There was a dog behind us barking, trying to come in and save us. He ran into the water and then turned around quick because it was too cold for him.
Oh yeah, it was like, I want to save you, but this is way too.
It's like, forget it,
too cold for me.
Yeah. And I'll just,
it's amazing.
Well, that's how cold it was. That's my body. You guys took a photograph of me. Like how red my body is.
Nice and red.
Okay, we'll get this off here because there's some creepy old guy.
Lobster.
Yeah.
Feel the wild.
But it's just been great. So we're going to keep doing this. I've been inspired by you and by this Wim Hof guy. I've been going in a cold pool here every morning, and it's yesterday it was I think it was about 5. It was 42 degrees Fahrenheit, so probably about five or something. Yeah. And I've got up to about 12 minutes now, which is, it's just like I get out and I feel like $1 million. So yeah, thank you for getting me on that path. It's been incredible.
For me, it's really what it all comes down to in the end. It's always a question of perspective.
Yes.
Like here we are in our body, like with our bodies, where like a year, 2 years ago, like something that would be impossible to do.
Yeah.
And now, like you found yourself in the place where, despite this gut reaction of clamping and just, getting into a place of anxiety and guilt, you're able to, through breathing and through exercise and commitment and time, you're able to get to a place where the world might be falling apart around you, and yet you find your center, you find your place.
Yeah.
And, whether you find yourself a mantra like me, it's stop, breathe, relax, listen, or it's a breathing exercise, and you follow the Wim Hof method. But as long as you find something that gives you a structure to manage the hardships of life, and there's a capacity to expand, our minds and whatever the body can do. And I think that there's something that needs to be reminded in events like, what we're going through right now.
Yeah, I really believe, what you're saying. And I think the power of nature. And I mean, the question that Devon had, I think, was really relevant, to a lot of people, in life these days. It may not be a bear coming at you. It may not be your kayak breaking in half, but there's that anxiety, there's those traumas, those things. And for me, I've had some bit of PTSD from the past, and I was just in my older life here, I've been getting these crazy anxiety attacks out of the nowhere, completely shutting my body down, which I've never had before, and I couldn't figure it out. And just life was just becoming crazy. And I mean, during COVID, it's forced me to kind of slow down, reflect. But also, I've always spent a lot of time out in nature, but I was spending more time in nature, more time reverence to nature, like appreciating nature and hiking and breathing, and then the cold water, all this stuff that I've been kind of just doing. My blood pressure before was high. I've been on blood pressure medication for 5 years. And yeah, it was crazy. And now, because I've, been spending so much time in nature, and I've been, doing the breathing and all of this, I've been able to bring my blood pressure down without pills. I stopped to it's 120/70, which is good for me. It's good. And without any medication. So, this is the power of nature. This is the power of breathe. This is the power that is so good for all of us. And that's just my own personal experience. And, so I mean, thank you.
The message, one of the messages that I try to tell people is that, wilderness, yes, is a place that is where the human presence is, less or not. But nature is this world that is all around us. And it's this framework for personal transformation. It's a set of values and principles that helps you understand life. Call it, maybe it's a religion relationship with, but you look at it and then you look at your life, and then you can understand, take the lessons and then apply them to your life. And you look at nature, and I call it like it's a harmonious, constructive chaos, where it's not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to be fair. It's meant to be experienced and grow. And, it's growth, and it's learning, and it's reciprocity, connectedness, duality, all these. It's so full of tension. Tension is part of life. That's what allows my heart to beat and my legs to move. And the goal is not to kind of shelter ourselves from it, but to move with it. So it's really kind of shifting our perspective toward nature, and not looking at it as a system that is flawed and need to be corrected, but rather as this thing that is bigger than us, and is a treasure of insights and lessons that makes us better. Ultimately.
I think it's a good point, because we can, experience nature anywhere. And like you said, it doesn't have to be the wilderness. You don't have to be climbing upside of a mountain. I've experienced it in Japan, where you'd be in Tokyo, in one of the most densely populated cities. And Devon's been there with us. We have family there. And a little courtyard in some little spot with a little bit of raked, not even grass, just raked rocks in a certain way, with a little tiny tree, like a bonsai tree in the middle. That's all it is, this tiny little thing. And the calm and the peace that space gives is just wonderful. And I think the Japanese have done it. It's just incredible. The philosophy and everything. Well, the way they coexist with nature is something else.
It's part of their, Shintoism. Nature is part of it. And if you take the word shizen, my apologies to the Japanese for the mispronounce of the word, but it's a term. It's nature, but humans are not excluded from that. Humans are part of that. In fact, that's going to be my next book, because I've always been extremely connected to the Japanese philosophy, the Japanese culture, but nature is not outside of this equation. And we can experience nature every day. And between humans, because we are part of the air that I breathe right now has been recycled for eons of, millions of years. The sun that I see every, morning, or the clouds, or the trees, or the birds, or anything, this is all part of life. And in fact, for me, there's absolutely no difference between life and nature. They're the same. It's the same energy. It's the same reality. And by accepting that, then you start to see the world in a total different way. It's not about saving nature, but it's about finding a harmony in a relationship with the planet, with the world, within ourselves. And it becomes less about blaming the past or ourselves, but rather kind of like evolving and finding a sweet spot, like you were saying earlier.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I was going to ask you if you had any other final words, but I think that pretty much wrapped it up right there.
This is where you
That
want
was
to have
beautiful.
that little
That was-
crescendo of music, and just like, ta-da.
I know, yeah, that's great. So I don't know so check out Daniel's book. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The photography and the stories in it are just great. Feel the Wild.
Yep.
And and Devon, do you have any
No, that's it.
any final words there?
No, I'm
Yeah.
good
So
there.
we'll so I guess we'll thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
People
This
are
has been-
welcome to go on my site, danielfox.com.
Yeah.
.co, no, not com.
Dot .co, yeah.
Dot
We'll put
co.
everything put
Yeah.
everything on the end here, and
Yeah.
good. So Dev, yeah.
So that looks like that'll be a wrap for our podcast today. Thank you all so much for listening. And if you want to check out more about Daniel Fox and all of his explorations and his endeavors, we'll put all that information in the description. Check out his book, Feel the Wild. Amazing pictures in there, even more amazing stories. Maybe not more amazing than the pictures, but just as amazing. The Power of Nature, his short film. Check it out. It's on YouTube. It's amazing. There's so many cool messages for, all walks of life in there. And then his new project that'll be coming out soon, Feel the Wild VR. So everybody stay tuned. And thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Daniel. Okay.
We'll talk to you later.